Restaurant Unstoppable. Inspire, empower, and transform the industry. After now 6 years of working in a partnership, or is it 5 years? 5 years of working in a partnership. Any lessons about partnerships that you learned that are serving you today at Justo?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you learn a lot from failures, and you learn a lot from making mistakes. And I think one thing that we all we didn't iron out as best as we could have at the beginning was creating not only kind of expectations for each other, but also, clear roles and dividing those roles up.
Did you listen to our interview before our first interview?
No.
We talk about this, and I was asking you questions about this, ironically. And you're like, we all kind of just, pick up where the other one left off.
Yeah.
I was like, interesting.
And it worked for a while, but then at a certain point, if two people's dreams and aspirations are the exact same thing, in some ways that helps, but in other ways, if Eric, you and I are doing this podcast together, we start this podcast company, Restaurant Unstoppable, we both have the same goal and dream, there's at a certain point, like, one of us has to take the lead.
Yeah.
And there can't be two voices interviewing and having these conversations with different restaurateurs and chefs. So for us, it was hard because in a lot of ways, Michael and I wanted a lot of the same thing, and maybe we wanted to do certain things that Jim was doing, or maybe Jim, vice versa. So, because I think we didn't have the clearest set of expectations for each other and who was exactly doing what. And, also what you want to do evolves too. And I love being a chef. I'm passionate. I love cooking. But I don't want to be in the kitchen the rest of my life. That's not my goal. Yeah. I want to learn. And of course I could be learning in the kitchen nonstop from other cooks and other chefs. That's great. But for me personally, I needed and wanted, a little bit more. And so I think it's really important that if, going into partnerships with people, there were so many pros. I learned so much from Michael and Jim and
so there's two Mikes. So Michael is Michael Lombardi.
Yes. Yep.
Your chef friend that you grew with, and there's another Mike.
Yeah.
It gets a little confusing. He was one of the partners of Coda Group, who brought you guys on as partners for SRV.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep.
So in case that got confusing for the listeners.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many benefits to having partners. First of all, and this is kind of the obvious one, it's like there were four of us. There was three other people aside from me that were as emotionally invested in the business, as financially invested in the business, and would do anything to make that business succeed. Yeah. So, you can trust, and we could trust each other, which was amazing.
And those are the benefits of a partnership.
Exactly.
There's a reason why one of our core values at Restaurant Unstoppable is collaboration, because you cannot do it alone.
Right.
You literally cannot do it alone. You can't be expected to be good at everything and be the best in the industry today, because you will burn out.
It's impossible.
There's freaks out there. Unless you're a freak, I don't recommend doing it, and those freaks, they burn out. You pointed out like Marco Pierre White and some of these people that were your aspirations when you were young, but then you were also quick to say they burnt out. These people might be rock stars, but at the same time, do we really want to recreate that life for ourselves of not really having a life but the restaurant? Is that reasonable?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. It's not reasonable. And my goals 5 years ago are different than my goals right now.
Yeah.
And so what did that partnership and having other people as partners in the business and the restaurant help me to where I am now? It really taught me communication. I think communication is so important, and that's not something hasn't been one of my strong suits. Growing up as a kid, it just wasn't something that came naturally to me in a lot of ways.
I think you're doing great right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But let's pull back some layers on this, because this is huge. It's another one of our core values. We have to communicate. So where do you struggle with communication?
So I've struggled with communication before, where you expect something from somebody, right?
Yeah.
And just because you talked about it before, right? Okay, Eric, let's say you're my sous chef in the kitchen, right? And you and I have talked about how this is how I want you to break down a fish. Mm-hmm. This is how I want you to fillet it, scale it, score it, and portion it. And I'm going to assume now, we went over it once. I spent 2 hours, like dedicated my afternoon to really showing you and whatever. I'm going to assume that you know how to do that now. And that's, and you know, I'm going to let you kind of do it. I'm going to give you the fish and you're going to fly on your own and you're going to make a couple mistakes or whatever. You know, I might expect that if you had a question, you come back to me and you ask me, or I might assume that, you know, I'm going to let you fail a couple of times and then I'm going to come back. And if the communication, if I didn't come back to you and say, all right, Eric, it's been 2 weeks now, you're still not doing this fish the way that we talked about. Let's sit down and do it again. Let's communicate about that. I wasn't great about that, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. And since this is a really small example of like me being in the kitchen doing it, but you know, I think I'm way better at communicating now and everybody around me helps. And I think, you know, starting with my wife at home, she's a great communicator. And
thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Good memory.
Yeah, well, I wrote it down.
Okay. Shout out to Sarah. Love you, baby. So, you know, I'm inspired and I'm learning from all areas of my life. And I think where we are right now at Justo, we have an incredible team. Executive Chef Kyle Stamps, General Manager Lauren Schaefer, Director of Operations, who was one of my first mentors, Aaron Edwards. You know, our full management team is just so amazing. You know, Olivia Wordy is our bar manager. We have Katie Ellis is our assistant general manager. We got a great chef team. My brother's in the kitchen as our executive sous chef. And we have to communicate. And, you know, while I may not have a partner per se in this business, I have I look to them as my partners.
Yeah.
And I treat them like my partners. I try to, and I listen, I value their opinions. I try my best to give them a voice and let them, you know, manage up to me and be honest with me and tell me if I'm making a wrong decision, or, you know, we collaborate together on important decision-making processes. And I learned that from having partners at SRV. So I think if I didn't do that and I tried to just open a restaurant on my own for the first time, no partners, we would have failed miserably.
Yeah. So what does good communication look like? How were you doing it when you kind of painted the picture of how you did it when you first came in. Basically, like you would communicate and then it would stop. You wouldn't follow up. There was no follow up. So how do you bake that follow up into your business today, where you make sure that there's follow up?
I think the most important thing to start off with communication is having a clear plan and thought and idea to begin with, and being able to articulate that as best as you can in a very direct and understandable way, so that the person that you're speaking to fully understands what you're talking about.
First, start with the end in mind, and then reverse engineer it.
Exactly.
Right? This is where we're going. This is what it's going to look like. Let's go there. And then a week later, is this what we discussed then? And how can I get you there?
Yeah, and creating, you know, setting those expectations. Again, something I learned with having partners. It's okay. This is what I'd like, or let's talk about this. This is our plan. This is our move. This is exactly what I'd like from you from this. You know, giving clear direction, making sure that person understands, and then the follow up, and then it's checking back in after a couple of days. Was there a deadline to something that we had talked about? Am I missing? Do I need to? Do I have some sort of deliverable that we talked about? Me personally, then I hope that person holds me accountable as well, because I'm human as well, and I might miss a deadline or miss.
And that also needs to be baked into your culture. That hey, if I'm not doing what I say I'm doing, then you need to call me out on. The rules apply to me too.
Absolutely.
Right.